Alright, then I will be reading Hespia, a reference guide, a document that I have written to help players in my homebrew world of Arkevia, and specifically those that will be playing in the popular continent of Hespia. Hespia, a reference guide. Introduction. Welcome to Hespia, a continent of many peoples, places, and peculiarities. Below you will find brief descriptions of the main concepts that concern Hespia, the broken continent. This is very much a constantly evolving document, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to say. As with all these guides, the best source for more information that you can find yourself is online at my World Anvil site for Arkevia. Links in the document. The World Atlas and especially the World Encyclopedia are your best bets. Please enjoy. Summary. For those keen to get a taste of Hespia without reading the reams ahead, look no further than this summary. In a single sentence, age of sail technology with fantasy themes. Nature plays an important role in everyone's lives. Big differences between each settlement and a huge melting pot of ancestries and cultures. Rulership. Varies by settlement, merchant guilds, powerful noble houses, magical cabals. Each settlement has a named baron, but their power varies hugely. Power shifts frequently and the great game never stops. Economy. Settlements tend to specialize in certain outputs, but individuals can make their fortune in any number of ways. Currencies are traded readily throughout the land, but a barter economy is often used, and many take great joy in their persuasive skills. Due to the influence of Old Bellow, food supply can be difficult and fluctuates wildly through the year. Technology. Gunpowder weapons are uncommon and expensive but widely spread, particularly through South Hespia. Building materials and architectural styles vary. In South Hespia, the size of settlements is restricted by the power of their sky singer, and so cities will often build tall rather than wide. Artisans and those who gather or work materials are highly prized. Crystal outcroppings are common across Hespia and have multiple uses between their different varieties. Crystal workers are perhaps the most valued of the different material workers. Magic. Displays of low power magic are common, but more powerful magic is often protected or hoarded by powerful agents throughout the nation. The center of magical learning and power is undoubtedly the settlement of Kael's Haven. Arcane magic is seen as invoking mystical laws of the universe through knowledge and learning to manipulate reality. Divine magic invokes the power of beings greater than mortals. Primal magic invokes the power of nature, and specifically the Kiad Shur. Occult magics have a wide variety of sources and expressions. Culture. South Hespia is a welcoming, lively nation that in a positive light would be considered a meritocracy, but is often manipulated or domineered by those already in power. Art is valued, but the average citizen lives a life of highs and lows and will spend great time and effort overcoming obstacles and trying to climb the ladder of life whilst paying dues to the powers that be, of which there are many. Individual cultures are vibrant and disparate. A common point of contention between folk is whether they believe civilization needs to work hard to connect and be balanced with nature, or if they think civilization's role is to dominate nature and they resent nature's power. Following this summary, there are contents more in detail. We begin with the land, then the people, the gods, places of interest, time, the calendar, and a brief history, and finally other nations and lands. Number 1. The land. Hespia was a singular landmass many thousands of years ago, or so the scholars would have us believe. Whether by a singular cataclysmic event or through the gradual movements deep beneath the ground, the continent is now broken into 3 main areas and a 4th archipelago. North Hespia, South Hespia, the Hespid Remnant, and the Crumpled Crown Archipelago. North Hespia is a rugged expanse of natural grass plains, dense forests, deep lakes, and high mountains. The majority of its people are scattered in tiny villages or hamlets, though there are a few larger settlements of note, with Deliverance in the northwest, technically the seat of the Hespian monarchy. Beneath Deliverance in the far west, beyond the Twin Faces mountain range, is an area of desert, the Parched Peninsula, containing large settlements that compete for the rich sediments found in the dunes. The North Hespian landmass is defined largely by the Walking Woods to the east, with the Lumber Spine Mountains nestled within them. Every year there is a chance for the woods themselves to uproot and walk the length of North Hespia, travelling from the north side of the Lumber Spines to the west around Lake Stride before finally coming to rest on the south side. This mass migration of timber and the beasts driven before them would destroy everything in their way, and so people either live far from the migration path or in a constant nomadic state. Those looking for adventure may travel to North Hespia seeking it. It is in many ways truly wild, and still ruled by the forces of nature. South Hespia is the more civilized of the two main sides of Hespia, though it is still ruled by natural forces. Old Bellow, the gigantic volcano in the Hespid remnant, belches forth thick clouds of ash that fall all across South Hespia with awful regularity, once per year. The ash is toxic beyond mundane means, and seems to corrupt sentient life that it touches. As such, in contrast to their northern cousins, the people of South Hespia congregate in much larger settlements and are rarely seen trying to form small settlements in between. Each settlement keeps at least one sky singer within its walls, an individual with the special talent to use their voice to summon the winds and protect their settlement from the toxic ash. Overall less rugged than North Hespia, the southern landmass still boasts beautiful mountain ranges and stunning shores. To the east lies the Forsaken Expanse, an area so heavily affected by the ashfall each year that the ground refuses to grow life. The south is home to Lake Oculus, a vast expanse of mostly still, clear water connected to the divining of fate. The Hespid remnant is the final piece of the mainland of Hespia. It is said that the ground is made of dark glass, and that the only light that cuts through the thick smog clouds is the dull, incessant glow of Old Bellow and his kin, the volcanic range that dominates the landscape. The only vestige of civilization to be found there is in Astrid's Claim, a dwarven settlement of mysterious reputation. The three land masses are all divided by the river Hesp itself, a broad waterway that runs from east to west. To the north of North Hespia are a series of islands that form the Crumpled Crown Archipelago, a series of 7 islands that have been the subject of adventurers and prospectors seeking fortune for many years. The islands themselves boast little greenery and do not provide a hospitable climate, but there are a few hardy folk who have stubbornly forged small settlements upon 3 of the islands. Many of these folk are from the northeastern city of Trinity, and for one reason or another have seen fit to strike out on their own. One more of the islands is said to be inhabited by eternal elves, who are strictly isolationist and refuse any visits from outsiders. The remaining 3 islands are seemingly bereft of civilization, and instead provide a home for the elements and the few species of creature that can make use of the barren land. Number 2. The people. Hespia is a land of many different ancestries. Most settlements boast a vivid mixture of peoples, though others might be more focused. It varies from place to place. Below are a list of the ancestries found in Hespia, sorted into rough brackets of commonplace, uncommon, rarely seen, and truly exotic. Each ancestry in Arkevia has a rich culture all its own, but they are too numerous and detailed to all be listed here. If you are curious or looking for more detail, please use the link at the beginning of this document and click on the World Encyclopedia, Fauna and Flora, Sapient Species for the full rundown. Commonplace in most of Hespia are humans, ephemeral elves, half-elves, ephemeral, orcs, half-orcs, harengon, gnomes, halflings, hadozi, shifters, Tabaxi or catfolk, gnolls, ratfolk, and shuni. Uncommon in most of Hespia are dwarves, goblins, bugbears, hobgoblins, centaur, Aarakocra or Strix, loxodons, kenku or tengu, goliaths, tieflings, genasi, gif, gripli, and kobolds. Rarely seen in most of Hespia are Triton or Azarketi, Eternal Elves, Threekeen, Owlin, Minotaur, Yuan-Ti or Nagaji, Asimar, Dragonborn, Lizardfolk, Fetchling, and Kashrishi. Truly exotic in most of Hespia are Gunkers, Wildrid or Leshy, Tortle, Fairy or Sprites, Satyr, Spiritborn, Gith, Lokatha, Anadi, Konrasu, Goran, Fleshwarp, Goloma, Kitsune, Poppet, Shisk, and Skeletons. Points to remember concerning ancestries. Ephemeral elves are descended from the elves that decided to forsake their immortality and direct connection to nature and the Kiad Shore so that they could mix with other ancestries as they liked. Eternal elves are descended from, or still living from, when the Great Split occurred in their ancestry and they decided to maintain their direct connection to nature and keep their immortality. Ephemeral elves keep the physical characteristics of elven kind, but are often said to lack the incredible grace and elegance of their eternal cousins. Hostage embassies exist in Crucible, one for Sedistray and one for Glamorand. These are essentially closed communities where citizens of other nations live under their home nation's laws and act as embassies for their people. This has led to some misgivings between districts in Crucible, which is the capital of South Hespia, and some of this bad blood runs deep. This particularly affects halflings and gnomes, who are the most common races in the nation of Glamorand. Number 3. The Gods. The gods of Hespia belong to either the Transcended or the Kiad Shore. The Transcended are unique to Hespia, each of them originally a mortal, or more rarely a collection of mortals, who through their great deeds and strength of spirit transcended their mortal forms to become a deity in power, influence, and worship. The Transcended are immanent deities, able to be interacted with. They have been sighted and will sometimes appear when they are most needed, or in a place and time where their domains are being invoked. However, their power is directly drawn from their worship, and so their influence drops away drastically from the shores of Hespia itself. Some few citizens of Sedistray worship them, and they may receive flickers of their influence, but fealty to the Transcended is strictly outlawed in Glamorand for many reasons. Important examples: Serian Shorestrike, the most broadly worshipped and best loved Transcended, often referred to as the Young King. Serian's actions founded deliverance in North Hespia and is broadly seen as the symbol of Hespian civilization and pride. He is known for his wisdom and responsibility as a leader. For Serian's full story, see here, link in the document. Lesia Greyheim, the Peacebringer, a Transcended of great importance to the people of South Hespia specifically. Each year when the ash falls from Old Bellow's eruption, it brings death and corruption as it lands across the breadth of South Hespia. The Sky Singers protect the major settlements, but any creature caught out becomes a mutated monster. Lesia Greyheim put down the mutated members of her own family, giving them the final piece of death itself. Since her heroic actions, many have taken up the mantle of Peacebringer, following the Ashfall each year. She symbolizes redemption, the bonds of community, and duty in the face of horror. For Lesia's full story, see here, link in the document. The Kiad Shur, on the other hand, are universal. All peoples across Arkevia have varying awareness, reverence, and communion with the great spirits of nature known as the Kiad Shur. Each holds domain over a different area of nature, but as with the world itself, they often act in combination with one another. Disrespect of nature can draw the ire of the Kiad Shur, which itself can take many forms. The Wildrid are the direct servants of the Kiad Shur's will, and can appear in many different forms depending on their need. The Kiad Shur are worshipped in many different ways. Some say silent words of thanks before they eat or drink. Others might work overtly to promote the health, abundance, and balance of nature. Good deeds do not go unnoticed, and the Kiad Shur will give their blessing to those worthy of it. It is said that each Kiad Shur has a true ancient name and a mystical symbol that defines them. Anyone in possession of both a Kiad Shur's true name and able to draw its true symbol can, legends say, form a powerful personal connection to the great nature spirit in question. The full list of the Kiad Shur can be found here, link in the document. Important examples: Saltcrest, the Kiad Shur connected to the oceans and any bodies of salt water, often shown reverence and tribute by those whose life depends upon the sea. Sina, Lortree, and Filtree. Sina the Great Moon, who dominates the sky, is seen as perhaps the most powerful Kiad Shur, and is shown reverence by the vast majority of Hespians. Her sons, Lortree and Filtree, are much smaller moons, but between the three of them, they define the Arkevian calendar. Sina is connected to many different domains of life, but is seen as a loving mother figure to most. Lortree is associated with order, maturity, and patience, whilst Filtree is associated with chaos, youthful drive, and spontaneity. Highfire, the name given to Arkevia's sun. Highfire is seen as the bringer of light and life to the beings of the land. Though secondary to Sina, Highfire is respected and venerated as a powerful Kiad Shur. Shimmer Rock. The Kiad Shur associated with magma, crystals, and veins of metal ore, venerated by jewelers, blacksmiths, and prospectors, as well as practitioners of the arcane magical arts. Number 4. Places of interest, South Hespia. Map of Hespia, link in the description. Lumen Village. Established sometime around the turn of the 2nd century post-Exodus, Lumen Village was originally a place for those weary of the bustling life of larger settlements such as Crucible and Kael's Haven to come and drink in a more rustic existence. Nestled in a picturesque area south of the southernmost peak of the Bodkins, just on the edge of the woods and distant from, but matching the crook of the Farsight Hills nicely, Lumen provides a unique placement, particularly for those interested in what these disparate elements of nature have to offer. The woods provide ample hunting opportunities, alongside the broader open grasslands to the south and west. Residents will go on long trips, hikes up through the Bodkins, to take in the incredible views out across the Hunter's Coast. Known for its spectacular lenses and being the smallest settlement to have a resident sky singer. Sea Spray. Established in the early 3rd century post-Exodus, Sea Spray has since far outstripped its sister settlement of Lumen Village. This growth was largely due to its beautiful stretch of coastline and perfect position on the protruding sandbar splitting Gatherer's Gap to the southeast and the Keel Touch Strand to the northwest, allowing sea travel far and wide, fulfilling multiple purposes. Sea Spray is a favoured tourist spot for the rich of Crucible, and many of them hold impressive summer homes along the beachfront. Crucible. The capital of South Hespia is a thriving mass of mixed peoples barely held behind tall stone walls. The city has been added to since its inception almost 800 years ago, with new tiers of it growing upwards and outwards. The city is built in the structure of a gigantic arena. The high, mighty, and wealthy keep their homes close to the centre, the tiers of the city closest to the ground, and more importantly, closest to the central stage. Entertainment of all different stripes is held day and night throughout the Arkevian year, some more bloody than others. The different Hespian festivals help mark the time as it passes in this busy melting pot of a city. As you ascend the tiers of Crucible, you pass through the lower echelons of nobility into the realms of the artisans and simpler craftsmen before eventually you reach the sprawling top tiers, where the general citizenry, poorer folk, and simplest professions can be found. From up here, the central arena looks minuscule, though many of the poverty-stricken communities will rally together their meagre copper coins to purchase or improvise a lensed viewing device, taking turns to gaze down longingly to the colourful displays in the arena far below. Kells Haven. Previously River Haven, this thriving town is home to many centres of learning and academia due to the patronage of Cale Clutchpearl, the Evermind. Cale is a transcended mortal who is seen as the patron of all arcane and academic endeavours in South Hespia. Young minds craving learning dream of travelling to Cale's Haven and gaining the tutelage at the Tower of the Evermind, though they know it much more realistic to hope to join one of its many subsidiary establishments rather than the tower itself. Merryhold. Famed across Arkevia for its stubborn defiance in the face of overwhelming odds, and many would say common sense, Merryhold is a town predominantly comprised of halflings. It sits firmly within the borders of the Forbidden Expanse, an area of South Hespia in the east mostly avoided by civilization and deeply affected by Old Bello and his corrupting ash. Many rulers of South Hespia have requested Merryhold move itself away from the Expanse, where it is under constant threat from mutant, monster, and marauder alike. But the Merryholders themselves always respond with a resounding no! Despite its joyous opposition, Merryhold is undeniably a dangerous place to live and to visit. Its people's hands are never far from their weapons, and its people's minds are ever vigilant. Farspire Lighthouse. The easternmost point of South Hespia is dominated by a huge structure, Farspire Lighthouse. Very little is truly known about this mysterious building. Representatives of each settlement have to travel here once per year to gather the mystical waters held in a shallow basin at the very top of the tower. They gather this to give to their sky singers, so that they might be able to perform their esoteric rituals and protect their respective settlements from Old Bello's corrupting ash. It has always been referred to as a lighthouse, and yet no fire or magical source of light burns within it. Legends whisper of it functioning as a beacon for movement beyond the material plane, but none have discovered any decisive evidence of this, and with the danger of the Forbidden Expanse around it, academics are loath to try. Number 5. Time, the Calendar, and a Brief History. Time. Time passes as you would expect in Arkevia, though there are a couple of known ancestries for whom time is likely perceived differently due to their apparent immortality. Both eternal elves and gunkers do not seem to age as other races do, and instead continue to exist eternally unless slain by other means. The Calendar. The Hespian calendar observes the cycles of the 3 moons in the Arkevian sky, Sina the Great Moon, Lortree the Elder, and Filtree the Younger. The year is 150 days long, meaning your average human might live for roughly 150 years, rather than 70-ish in our reality. This is the time taken for Sina to fully move through her cycle. The year is broken down into 10 months of 15 days each, which is the time taken for a full cycle of Lortree. Each month is broken down into 3 weeks of 5 days each, based on the cycle of Filtree, which takes 5 days. There are key dates throughout the year, and each month is begun with a celebratory night. For details, please have a look at the Arkevian calendar in full here. Link in the description. Brief history. The Age of Masking Mists. Pre-10,000 BE, or before Exodus. Daubed primal paintings in the deepest caves of Sedistray paint the picture of an age long lost to history. Almost nothing is known of this time, but the paintings themselves seem to tell a story of gigantic creatures striding through a land of cloying, choking mist, and the presence of these simple pictograms imply the existence of intelligent creatures living within the mists. Academics of Arkevia strive desperately to uncover more knowledge of this mythical time, yet very few pursuits bear meaningful fruit. The time of the Fang, roughly 10,000 before Exodus to 2,000 before Exodus. A long period of history has been broadly mapped out by excavations of primitive tools and bones. An academic would tell you that this was a brutal time ruled by smaller creatures than those in the mists, perhaps showing once more the balancing effect of nature and that nothing lasts forever. Sapient creatures banded together to defend themselves from the predations of monsters inhabiting vast forests. The Carving Era, roughly 2000 before Exodus to 0 post-Exodus. A new era dawned roughly 2,000 years before the Exodus, when the first peoples to be described as civilized emerged from the woods and showed skill with tools, crafting grand settlements and stunning works of artifice. This civilization has been called many different names by different academics, but is most commonly known in Hesperia as the Carvers, both in reference to their ability to tame both the beasts and the land of the wilderness, but also their seeming obsession with sculpture as an art form. Great caverns of sculpted figures and mind-blowing dioramas have been unearthed deep beneath the lands of the modern nations. The Exodus, 0 post-Exodus. The greatest historical mystery in Arkevia is the Exodus. Before then, history can be roughly but consistently traced, development of civilization tracked and understood. But after about 2,000 years of the Carving Era, everything just stops. There is no evidence of cataclysm or apocalypse. It is as if the vast, overwhelming majority of people upon the surface of Arkevia simply disappeared or left. This has come to be known as the Exodus, and it is a focus of many pursuits of modern minds, magical, academic, and more esoteric. Post-Exodus, 0 to 200 post-Exodus, the empty years. Following the Exodus, nature began to reclaim much of the land from which it had been cleared. Species that had previously existed in hidden enclaves or specific areas ventured out into the newly emptied space. Hollow buildings and silent cities fell to ruin from looting and the inexorable advance of plant and animal. Post-Exodus, 201 to 400 post-Exodus, the Founding. New societies began to assemble themselves as different species felt out their appetite for alliance or conflict. Sedistray began its long history of rival powers vying for control. Hesperia, in its infancy, established the first murmurings of its own culture. Post-Exodus, 401 to 600 post-Exodus, the Flourishing. With the space for expansion and resources feeling plentiful to the new nations, populations grew and the peoples of Arkevia pursued their dreams. This is a time often thought back on fondly by older generations. Post-Exodus, 601 to 800 post-Exodus, the Three Nations, the Modern Era. With different modern concerns and restrictions being placed on people, more conflict and difficult questions have presented themselves in need of answering. Number 6. Other nations and lands. Sedistray, the land of sand and bone. Often referred to as the three halves of Sedistray, due to the warring factions upon its land and its distinctive three-pronged shape, Sedistray is a place of desert and mountain biomes. The north and east prongs enclose a beautiful sea, rich in minerals and exotic wildlife. The southern prong has seen heavy development from dwarven cultures and is pockmarked by huge pits where the ground itself seems to have given way. These are surface signs of pyramite infestation, and it is said that these industrious creatures have a presence beneath the entirety of the sands, and perhaps even beyond. The shells of the creatures and the pyre-glass of their tunnels are both highly prized as a material for artifice, art, and invention, and is a major export of Sedistray. There is a strong Sari presence across Sedistray, and they frequently interact with the other elements of civilization there, sometimes in a friendly capacity, other times in a more hostile mindset. There is little vegetation in Sedistray, and its people must be canny to survive. Perhaps the most famous example of vegetation is the Dead Man's Orchard, a sweeping plain of countless dead and petrified trees, seemingly having dropped a harvest of bones from their boughs, as untold numbers of mixed skeletons can be seen protruding from the sands. Sedistray is certainly an exotic land of extremes, and anyone travelling there should expect the unexpected. Glamorand, Union of Peoples. A nation originally founded by refugees fleeing persecution in Crucible, predominantly made up of gnomish and halfling folk, but in the many years since has been joined by a veritable cornucopia of different species. Perhaps most notably is the presence of the metallic dragons, who seem to have taken a particular liking to the humble, brave folk who live in Glamorand. The nation prides itself on being a meritocracy and a tolerant society with a focus on technology and brave innovation in all walks of life. The Serrated Isles. A series of jungle-strewn islands surrounded by treacherous seas and under the protection of a large contingent of the Sari people. Previously thought entirely unsettled and unexplored, with many failed expeditions, but has recently been reached by a daring group travelling under the directions of Lord Ernst Quivershank. The tiny settlement of New Quivershank can be seen as a dull smudge amongst the deep green jungle on the eastern edge of the easternmost island. Verda. A huge landmass central to all peoples of Arkevia, providing the majority of sustenance to creatures great and small. Due to Sina's influence, the waters of Arkevia swell around Verda, and throughout the year the huge space cycles between being beneath the waves and being a rich landscape of plains filled to bursting with nourishing plants and animals. Nations often come to severe blows over dominance of Verda, as the continued survival of their people relies on sustainable plundering of enough foodstuffs each and every year. In the centre of Verda lies two gigantic mountains, one smaller than the other. Due to their position, these mountains have never been explored, and instead are seen as a sacred place, as close to Sina as it is possible to be as a mortal walking the lands of Arkevia. The Butterfly Isles. The twin islands of Portwing and Starwing broadly mirror each other, with a densely forested lowland leading to a snow-bound highlands of hills and mountains. Expeditions have been made to the Butterfly Isles, and those who returned spoke of fantastical flora and fauna. Sapient species of unusual forms, such as fairies, were said to exist in communes hidden deep in the woods. Travel to the Isles is neither common nor frequent, but those who do travel there never seem to be disappointed in their journey. The Lost Northwest. The polar regions of Arkevia are found in the northwest and the southeast. Very little is known about the Lost region in the northwest. Expeditions attempting to reach it have been crashed upon the treacherous ice floes or simply gone missing. What mysteries might await those brave enough to do what has never been done before? The frozen southeast. At the opposite end of the world, to the lost northwest, is the frozen southeast. This polar region boasts bitterly low temperatures all year round, and few have been brave or stupid enough to try and reach it. There are a few who have scraped out a living upon its surface, and each has spoken of mysterious spirits, entities formed of ice and howling wind, that accost them. Others claim to have even conversed with these strange beings. A series of connected lakes mark the lowlands of the frozen southeast with a beautiful scene of glimmering mirror ice.